Warning. Nerd mode. Live from the basements of losers, this is the Cantina Cuisine.
We're talking about CGI apes. Welcome to the three-part series on December movies that were really late into 2024. We're talking about the CGI ape movie that is a little bit weird. I hope you're looking forward to Better Man, the Robbie Williams biopic, which I have never heard of Robbie Williams before until we got to see the trailer. All I know is a bunch of British people doing a bunch of British things and obsessions with fans of all the like. And my name is Patrick, and as you can tell, I love CGI ape movies.
And my name is Colin, and I don't want to pod, DJ, but you're making me feel so nice. When's it going to stop, DJ? Because you're keeping me up all night. That's a lyric in the song. Best Robbie Williams song, too.
which one was that?
That's the rock DJ, but pod DJ for this. That's the one when you take that, the group makes it big. It's all done fake to look like one shot, the big musical number.
Oh, yeah.
Great song. Great. And if you ever want to really get disturbed and grossed out, watch Robbie Williams' real video for Rock DJ.
Nope. I would not like that. Okay, so everybody, just for context here, I thought this was supposed to be a 14A movie. I saw Cineplex that was supposed to make it 14A. Turns out it's basically R-rated. There's a bunch of stuff that's just like, I don't know what the movie ratings are nowadays, but this is not a 14A movie. This is an R-rated movie with a bunch of musical numbers in there. And I'll be honest, I never like chaotic movies. And this movie is chaotic. There's a bunch of stuff where I wasn't expecting the movie to go. First of all, when you attach a CGI ape into someone as a biopic, like, you got me intrigued, but also very worried at the same time. Like, we're getting these biopics where it's actually not like Bohemian Rhapsody or Rocket Man. It's actually something clever and unique. Like, I don't know if you saw Piece by Piece, but that is a really unique concept of doing a Lego biopic. And I think that was brilliantly done. This, however, there's just a CGI ape amongst other humans and having Robbie Williams as the CGI ape. It looks a little weird. It also looks weird that the CGI ape is just making the moves like that, showing its almost bare naked butt, and just a bunch of weird stuff in like the gay strip club or in the girls, whatever. Was it the girls strip club or was it just a concert hall? I don't even know anymore. This movie is chaotic and I'm not the biggest fan of it. I do admit that there is a lot of good stuff in this movie, and we're going to get to talking about it a little bit, but I'm just like, I hate chaos. I don't like movies being chaotic, and this is just not for me. First of all, because I don't like Robbie Williams. I have never heard of his music before. The only song I do like was Angels, and that was the trailer song for it, and probably the only trailer that the movie ever played. And so, it's just like, I don't know. It's just nothing it's just not for me. It's for some aspects of it. There's a lot of aspects that I do like about it. We're going to get to that a little bit. Colin, why did you even end up going to see this? Was it because of your love for CGI apes?
Well, okay, I'm going to hijack here again for a couple minutes because I got several things to put into context.
Go ahead.
First, this on this side of the ocean, I'm not saying our side, Canada, is where we are, but in America, this has become the joke where it's like, why are you spending $100 million on a biopic about somebody nobody's ever heard of? And it's become this thing where people in England are getting offended. They're like, you have to know who a person is to enjoy a movie, which I agree with that argument. I'm like, this movie is directed by the same guy that made the Greatest Showman, which I was not a big fan of, but I know a lot of people who are like very high on it. I'm like, that might be one of rare cases where I'd be willing to give a movie a second look just to see, maybe I just wasn't in the right mood the first time around. But nobody who saw The Greatest Showman, or very few people who saw The Greatest Showman, knew who P.T. Barnum was. Your knowledge of who the subject is irrelevant in these movies. If you know who it is, it's just an extra marketing gimmick. Now, at the same time, the argument of why'd you spend $100 million on something, that I get, because you don't spend in England $100 million on a movie if you're expecting to recuperate those costs only in England. A movie's not going to make $100 million there. You spend that hoping you're going to recuperate the costs overseas, primarily America. Foolish to make $100 million movie on a singer people weren't familiar with in America. Now, us being in Canada, you're the wrong generation, but Robbie Williams was fairly popular over here. Not as big as he was in England, but your aunt, who has a bad memory just in general, but for names especially, she's like, I think I only know Robbie Williams because you've talked about him, because I've talked about him, right? And I am not like a massive Robbie Williams fan. I'm not like a fanboy, but Robbie Williams song comes on, I'm like, oh, I love this song. I'll play it. I've listened to a couple of his albums. I'm moderate fan of Robbie Williams. I played her probably 5 of his more recognizable songs, and she knew them. So he was popular here in Canada, which gives us a different perspective from those Americans who are like, well, we don't know who this guy is. Whether you know who it is or not, irrelevant. Now, on to the movie. I have developed, especially over the last 10 years, an extreme dislike for music biopics in general, but especially music biopics. I flat out hate them. I despise them. They are awful. They are the lowest form of entertainment for various reasons. Main reason being, music biopics are usually sold on nothing more than, look at what a good impression this person is doing of their performance. It's usually not even the Rami Malek winning an Oscar for Bohemian Rhapsody for lip syncing? No, because that movie has no substance, no story. And if you were to simply treat, let's say, Bohemian Rhapsody the way you treat Better Man, if you're an American audience going into Better Man, you're just viewing this as, oh, if this is an original story, because I don't know the real story. Bohemian Rhapsody, if that is just a story and nobody knew who Freddie Mercury was, nobody would think that was a good movie, because it is not. It is a poorly written movie that would barely pass for a VH1 biopic. The Whitney Houston one, even worse. The other 2 that came out earlier this year, the Amy Winehouse one, the Bob Marley one, also bad. Now, I hate music biopics. That out of the way. Couple good ones. Elvis blew my mind, because Elvis did something different. They focused the story. They said, we're not just going to show you all these famous moments so we can have another jukebox hit in there. We're going to actually do one section of the movie on this specific event of this concert and him being banned, and like the I guess controversy around him. Then we're going to flash forward and we're going to build towards an event of a comeback special. Then we're going to flash forward in the third act and really base it around the Las Vegas residency. They focused a story. Most music biopics don't do that. When this trailer came on, I didn't know the movie was even being made. When the trailer came on and I'm hearing Robbie Williams and stuff like that, and then you see it's an ape, I literally burst out laughing in the theater. And I turned to Jamie, I'm like, we are going to see this movie. Now, I do love CGI ape movies. It doesn't even have to be CGI. The classic King Kong movie, one of my all-time favorite movies, like the one from the 30s. Even the classic Planet of the Apes movies. I'm like a Planet of the Apes aficionado. I consume Planet of the Apes books, comics, the TV series, both the animated and the live-action TV series. I've seen every episode of. I know the classic movies and movies forwards and backwards. So you got me with that. It is a cool gimmick. The fact that it's an ape just made it special because of like, oh, I love the CGI talking apes or whatever. But this movie did something different, and I applaud it for that, because it doesn't fall into the trappings of regular music biopic, because they do something visually that catches your attention, even though it is never really addressed in the movie that this is an ape. It's just treated like this is Robbie Williams. It's a visual thing. The second thing is, they bring a fantasy aspect to sequences, and maybe that's one of the things you said you liked in this movie. Having said all that, I thought this was an okay movie. It was pretty good, which for music biopics, my personality means this movie's a masterpiece, but regular movies, it's okay. So there you go. Long rants out of the way there. You can continue.
I only asked you to do the biopics one for this one, especially because I know you guys don't like biopics. I know you're big fan about. I know your biggest fan about Bohemian Rhapsody being nominated for Best Picture.
Oh my god! And in all fairness, Bohemian Rhapsody is not even the worst music biopic. The Whitney Houston one was the worst music biopic. I never got a chance to cover that. I'm just going to quickly say the Whitney Houston music biopic literally had me almost in tears laughing at how bad it was, because there's such random things that come up. They have her filming a movie called The Bodyguard, which she made with Kevin Costner, which was a massive hit. And in that movie, they obviously don't get an actor to play Kevin Costner, but they obviously paid Kevin Costner to have one shot from the bodyguard, which literally in about 4 separate scenes, you just see a monitor displaying the one shot of Kevin Costner over and over again. That movie is atrocious. Bohemian Rhapsody is definitely lower end of music biopics. Whitney Houston one is lowest end. Better Man is like, it's upper middle tier.
And I think that I would have to agree with you, but I would be more of like the lower end of middle, because again, I don't like chaos. This movie portrays of all things British people, which we find British people weird. So I'm sorry, all you Britain fans.
I don't. Hold on. I'm gonna wash my hands clean of this. I probably consume more British content than I do Canadian or American content. I am a huge fan of British television. I subscribe to British TV services, and I will watch that over any Canadian or American shows. Huge fan of British movies. James Bond, obviously one of my podcasts, 007, huge fan of that. But even music. In any given week, I am probably spending more than 50% of my time listening to British music. And it's not even stuff most people are familiar with. People know who Oasis is or even Robbie Williams, but I'm listening to stuff where most Canadians would be like, who? Because that's my genre. So I am big on all British stuff, which is why I may have gotten a little bit more appreciation out of this movie.
And I guess that's where my non-appreciation for this movie, because the British aspect of it is just like, yeah, these people are talking in weird language. Oh, not weird language.
Weird language. It's their language. They created it. You're the one talking the weird language.
It's the weird way of talking like English. It's just weird. It's just, I can't understand.
It's a regional. It's there's many regions. Yeah, in England.
I understand, but it's like I can't understand a freaking thing that they're saying. It's just like half the things that they're saying are just British slang words that I don't even know, and half the stuff I can't understand is just like baby dialogue. Like, the movie script is not the best. I think that they could have done a little bit better in that job in the department, because the songs are clear, you can understand the words of the British songs, but when it comes to the people speaking, like actual speaking, they're just talking like in a whole different genre. Like, it's really weird. I find that weird, especially because, again, you get clear in the songs, not that clear when you get to the script.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Yeah.
I'm going to say that this is not just a British thing. In fact, I'll say it might be the opposite here in Canada, or you could say, depending on what you're listening. There's a Canadian band called Rush. Rush is in Canada. There's a band called the Tragically Hip, which is like so far above every other band. Like, they are like Beatles level of success. In Canada, Rush is number 2, but worldwide, Rush is the number 1 band people know. You listen to the guys from Rush talk, sound completely normal. You listen to him sing, and he suddenly sounds British. He's like, and the men who hold high places must be the ones to start. Like, it is definitely a thing where people sing differently than they speak. But the other thing I wanted to interrupt on here is one of my few gripes with this movie. So there is a character who is Robbie Williams' girlfriend in this movie for several years, which was a real girlfriend he had. She was in a girl group called All Saints, which came after the Spice Girls, if you're familiar with the Spice Girls, but were far superior in every way to the Spice Girls because they sang real music. It wasn't just bubblegum pop. I am, surprisingly, as an adult, a bigger fan of All Saints than I would have been as a teenager. I could have cared less about any type of pop music. But All Saints are generally a pretty solid group. Now, having said that, All Saints is made up of 4 girls, 2 of which were English, 2 of which were Canadian sisters. Nicole Appleton, who is his girlfriend in this movie, was one of the Canadian sisters who more or less in All Saints was just a background singer. What Robbie Williams was in Take That in this movie, she was to All Saints. In fact, I think in their first big hit, they had to hear a song called I Know Where It's At. If you watch the music video, Nicole Appleton does not even sing in the music video. She is just there to pose in the background. So, but my complaint being, in this movie, she has a British accent, but in reality, she is Canadian. And if you listen to her in interviews, even though she's lived in England for most of her career, she just sounds like a very proper sounding Canadian. So my complaint is you had one Canadian character we could have had representation of in this movie, and you made them British, when in reality, she was Canadian.
Well, I mean, we are technically British in the retrospect of things. So, I mean, I can understand the complaint, and I probably would not have catched that because I am.
Wouldn't have known,
I would not have known because I do not know Robbie Williams. I do not know Nicole.
In fact, my co-host on my other podcast, he's a big Robbie Williams fan. And he even knows All Saints. Like he's a big fan of All Saints. And I had mentioned that when I mentioned my complaint to him, and he's like, oh, but they were all British. Like even he didn't know. And like, he's probably more familiar with All Saints than I am. The difference being that she is one of the background girls that rarely gets media coverage unless you're in Canada, because like, hey, we can pass them off as a Canadian act and get past, the CRTC laws and stuff like that. We have to have Canadian content.
Yeah, and that would make a lot of sense. I know who you're talking about, because the Australian person that we've never got an episode of. I hope we get an episode.
You'll never get him. Yeah, right now you'll never get him.
Well, we broke a promise then. So Ben Waterworth, I am calling you out right now. We better get one at the end of the year, or I will shoot myself. Anyways, I won't.
You won't get him.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I'll work on it. Okay, so I do have some positives of the movie. Like, I think the music was actually pretty good. Like, I'm not gonna lie, song. Like, it's like they're great. Like, I think the music sequence you were talking about later, when you're just making it look like a one shot, like earlier, I thought that was really good. Like, I definitely did not know that the Greatest Showman director did this movie, but I definitely can see now why they chose him, because he does a great job of directing with the whole songs and all of that. Because I opposite to you, I love The Greatest Showman. I love the story, I love the music, and I love the actors. But the music is really good and really well done. I do think that there was one sequence there where we have angels being played, and it just is like
powerful.
It's powerful, but I do think that they didn't do it a lot justice, because we have him just ripping stuff right afterwards, which I don't think that's the point of the song. I don't think. So I think that they could have done a little bit of a better job with the context of the songs and just like kind of putting stuff where it is. Like, I do like the scene where he's tearing apart stuff, but he just sang a song about angels and then he's just ripping stuff apart like his life is ending. So, and that's probably one of my biggest gripes with the movie, because again, I don't know the history of this actor. I don't know what happened to him, but all I'm getting from this guy is that he's a cocaine user who just consistently does cocaine during his shows. And props to you for portraying that, because I would bet that pop stars would be doing that. But as a movie piece, not really that great. Like, it's just like this guy never grows in this movie. He just becomes more alcoholic as the movie goes on, and then we get this awesome redemption at the end of it, which we'll talk about in a second. I don't like I just don't like it. Like, it's not the biggest, like, set piece that we can get, because we get him downfalling and, like, spiraling down to this downward trail where he's just in the middle of the ocean, and then he pisses off his father. And then we get the match, and then we do get the awesome sequence of him just fighting off a bunch of apes at the end, which I found was pretty funny. But I don't know. I just don't like the fact that this character doesn't grow, except for, like, that last 10 minutes. So, it's... I don't know. It's just that doesn't appeal to me.
So I'll agree with you there, because one of my biggest gripes with all these music biopics is it's the exact same story every time. And none of these stories are interesting enough to make a movie. If this were a fictional movie, you didn't know who the celebrity was, this is not interesting. Becomes famous, goes off the rails, goes into rehab, has a big comeback show. It's the exact same story every single time, because this is what most artists, of most eras went through. But I like that they showed the contradiction of having, like, the song Angels, a very powerful song, and like he is down in the dumps and everything. The one you were talking about, which was at his comeback show, the Nebworth show. Nebworth in England is like a massive festival. Like he says it's over 100,000 people. Most artists who play Nebworth, it is their biggest show they'll ever play. The Oasis, who are arguably the biggest band to come out of England within my lifetime, their greatest moment was playing Nebworth in front of, like, hundreds of thousands of people. So it is a huge deal. And the song he plays there is probably the one song I like even more than Rock DJ, which is Let Me Entertain You. It's an amazing song, but the way they present it, this is what I liked about this movie, is they did something different. Instead of having to show a million scenes where somebody's, throwing their life away, and then they have to be given a pep talk and stuff like that, and then they have a big breakdown moment. His breakdown moment literally evolves into what I could only equate as a video game sequence of taking on versions of himself in the most bloody battle you could imagine in a music biopic. It was a clever way of presenting it. The one thing that I wish we did have more of, which is this father and son storyline, which flies very under the radar. And they're two great, probably the only two. In the end, this is nothing more than your typical music biopic. But the two scenes that really anchor it is the scene where he's in the pool, and it's basically a scene, without spoiling too much, of, I was always there for Robbie, and it's like, no, you were there for Robbie, you weren't there for Robert, which is great, good writing, that scene. And then the very climax of this, where I won't spoil it what it was, where you get this, the climax of the movie is about this father and son thing that you didn't develop properly throughout the movie. And that was frustrating me, because that's what this could have been, to make it different, to make it something where it's not just your typical music biopic about somebody throwing away their life and then getting their success back. You dropped the ball there. And then the actor who plays his dad, Steve Pemberton, just again about how I love British. He was on a British TV show, or a couple British TV shows, but there's a comedy called Benidorm, which he was on for several seasons. That is one of my go-to shows where I'm like, if I finish watching the show within a couple months, I'm just restarting the show over and over again. He's a great actor. He's also a writer too. Give him more to do in the movie, because I think in the opening scenes, I'm like, is that Steve Pemberton? And then he just disappears from the movie. But then when they try to bring him back in, I'm like, this wasn't an arc that was really part of the movie. And you could have ditched a lot of like the excess scenes of him snorting coke and all this stuff, which does get very extreme, and substitute it with a little bit more heart, that those final scenes would have had. The final scenes had impact, but they didn't have as much impact as they could have.
Yeah, and I do think that the father-son, it definitely could have grown. I do also like the scene where they were like before, or it wasn't after one of their shows before Net Worth, where they're talking about the net worth and how they got to net worth, and then the father just brings in, is like, you're there to have people forget about their problems, and I thought that was a cool little. I thought that was a little bit cool to think about how showmen is there to help people forget about their problems, but then they just stitch it completely. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that could have been a nice little piece of a comeback story for him, is that I'm there to entertain people. Maybe I can stop doing what I'm doing, but no, he just keeps going back to the same thing. And then the abuse to his wife too. Like, I don't know why why she was even brought in the first place. Like, it's just it's really forgettable. Like, it's only spent like 20 minutes in the movie based off just him and his wife, him abusing her, and then she leaves her. So it's like very like, and there's no comeback to that either. It's like he just ends up leaving her, and then that's it. That's all they're doing, and it doesn't really even drive the plot at all. Like, I felt like they could have done something else that could impact, like you said, maybe the father-son could get more screen time instead of this whole Nicole and him falling in love. Yeah. Although I do like the dance sequence. The dance sequence is actually pretty good, and how they time lapse it a little bit. But
the masquerade thing, yeah.
Yeah, I do think though that they wasted time with this, because it doesn't add up to anything. It doesn't impact anything. It doesn't impact his turn on the end. The only thing that impacts his turn at the end is how his father is treating him.
Yeah, the love story, if you want to call it that, it was their attempt to, let's bring in other recognizable celebrities for a music biopic, which, because you are disguising your main subject, I feel like this movie didn't need. If this movie were being about Robbie Williams and you had an actor playing young Robbie Williams, I would get it. But if you're going out of your way to be like, this movie isn't about the celebrity you knew, we're just presenting a life story in a different way. The only reason to bring her in is because they wanted to anchor a part of the movie to be your typical music biopic, where you've got the girl and then you screw it up and stuff like that. But more or less, it's there to introduce the Gallagher brothers, who are from Oasis, in a cameo scene where you got Liam and Noel Gallagher, which the guys played them very well. Like, if you ever seen the Gallagher brothers, they play them very well. But man, for a movie that spent $100 million to make Robbie Williams one of the most realistic looking chimpanzees in the history of film, they couldn't spend $12 to get a decent wig for Liam Gallagher, who Nicole Appleton ends up marrying and leaving him for, and everything. It's a waste. And I'll completely agree with you. I think that is where the second half is where I really started to lose interest. The first half, the rise to success, seeing them play gay clubs, the way they originally tried to take that as a band, I'm like, this is amusing stuff. But when you get to, at any point in a music biopic where somebody suddenly becomes successful, that's the stuff everybody already knows. And you don't need to tell that story unless you are just trying to fit in, here's some other celebrity cameos that at least the British audiences are going to pick up on. And I feel like that's all it was there for. You could have just ditched that, and you could have just built this around the parents, which I think is the much better story.
Or we could even build a little bit more about the grandma, because the grandma is a
Yeah.
pivotal part of the story too, and she gets nothing to do. Like, she's supposed to be having this big dramatic scene in the movie, and it doesn't really relate with us because
Mm.
we didn't get to spend a lot of time with her. And apparently she meant so much to Robbie, and gosh darn it, we didn't get a lot of time with her, so we can't really explain why she means this much to Robbie,
Yeah.
except for with this one scene that she got to have a bath with, that she gave him a bath when he was a kid, and then when he was on the couch with her with all these reporters out there. So I felt that they could have done that too. I also do want to praise the retrospect of the movie that has the the audiences and how they're portrayed. Like, I felt like that was a little bit of a good job to capture the chaos of the of like the just people in general towards pop stars, because I don't think we're that chaotic as it comes to Canada, but having people that just freak out and just like, oh yeah, there's Robbie Williams, and having the people just go out of their way to just do crazy stuff, and just having them just being produced as chaos is it's well done. I am glad. I just did not enjoy it that much because they just brought nothing to the story. So I don't know. It's just, this movie is very confusing at times, but at
Mm.
the heart of it is like we get this last 10 minutes of this nice reconciliation moment where Robbie is back on top and is recovering, but he's still like kind of the same person, but he's a little bit different. I felt like that scene was probably the best in the movie because we get this cover of, I guess he covered like one of the old
Frank
musicians that they were
Sinatra's.
listing as when he was a kid. I felt
One
like
of the
that,
most Frank Sinatra's most famous singer, maybe outside of Elvis, to ever live. His most signature song, "My Way." Yes.
did he even do that before this movie? Because I'm actually curious if he
Robbie
actually
Williams.
covered it.
Robbie
Yeah.
Williams actually. This is one of the things that was cool. Is that they made this part of the movie from the very beginning of him singing these old school standard songs, because Robbie Williams did eventually put out albums like that, like doing these cover songs. In fact, if you ever can find, Robbie Williams did a Christmas album. He did a Christmas album in the style of like 40s and 50s sounding stuff. So yeah, that's definitely something that he was known for later on. He's like, I think I'm finding right now, it was called Songbook. Oh no, sorry, Songbook was a different one. But yeah, he did do an album at one point, which was all these traditional songs. Swings Both Ways, is that it? There we go. So yeah, 2013, he released an album called Swings Both Ways, which was done in the style. It had a lot of covers, but it also had some original songs, and it was done to be that style of singing.
And I do like it how that song is the final song in the movie, because we get this nice little thing from the dad, and then the dad actually comes in to do a little something with him at the end of it. So I do like that part of the movie. I do think it redeems a little bit of what the movie was going for, but again, they didn't build up that father-son relationship dynamic. That really didn't sell
And
my portion of it.
And actually, just a slight correction here. He did 2 albums of like old school standards in 2001, which was very early in his career, which actually would have been before the Nebworth show. He did his first album, which is called Swing When You're Winning. And he did covers on that one of stuff like Mac the Knife and Beyond the Sea, like things that are, going to be very familiar for most people. Yeah, he perfectly suits multiple styles, which I think is one of the appeals of Robbie Williams as a singer, is that he's not one genre. I was explaining him to my wife. I was saying that like he has pop songs when you listen to music, but he sings it like a rock singer. But then he'll do swing songs and old school standards, and it's like he's always unpredictable. And this movie did capture a lot of that.
Well, yeah, because the movie is chaos, so there's a lot of that unpredictable side to him, because it's just throughout the movie he's unpredictable, and just the way that he acts around people, the way he acts around his wife, the way he acts around his fans, like, is a little bit of an unpredictable characteristic, and I think they captured him perfectly in that regard with the ape. But I do think that the movie could have solved, again, like the problems with the story and how this guy, it's just the same story as every other biopic where a person just goes downhill. And I just felt like they could have done something a little bit different. So I'm renting the movie. It's not something I'll go out of my way to see it. I'll probably put it as a low rent because nothing's really appealing except for that last 10 minutes and maybe that special rock. I want a rock music.
Rock DJ,
number.
yeah.
Rock DJ, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Rock DJ and Let Me Entertain You, those two sequences injecting some fantasy stuff in it is really what made it for me. Because there's only a handful of music biopics I really liked. Probably one of my favorites was Bobby Darin, the singer of Mac the Knife and Beyond the Sea. He did a movie. There was a movie called Beyond the Sea that Kevin Spacey, who's I guess getting uncanceled now, wrote and directed and starred in. And that movie I absolutely love because that did a similar thing where it was your traditional music biopic, but for the musical sequences, it would be like an old school Hollywood musical where it would be people singing and dancing in the street. And that I liked out of this. And in a way, I wish they'd almost done a little bit more with the whole ape gimmick with him. But at the same time, I just appreciate that in all scenes, you're looking at him as an ape, and even opens the movie by saying, this is a movie about the way I see myself, you know? And I think it's kind of fun and it makes it different enough. But in the end, it is just another music biopic. It's just slightly better made than most of the other music biopics. So it would be the same for me. It's a rent, but it's a rent where I'd be very curious to watch this one again.
I do have a question for you before we end this little recording, this little session of talking over biopics. Did you ever see the Bob Dylan biopic yet?
Not yet. I have an obligation to see it because my mom, your grandma, that was her all-time favorite singer. And I'm like, out of respect for her, I'll see it. I am not a Bob Dylan fan. I would go as far as to say that I am turned off by Bob Dylan as an artist. I'm also very iffy on Timothy Chalamet. Sometimes I'm okay with him. Sometimes I'm not okay with him. But I will get around to seeing that one eventually. It's not top of my list.
Fair enough. I just saw you as like a Bob Dylan kind of guy because my mom likes him. So
I know your mom. That was so all of us growing up. Like you've got your mom, me, and your other uncle. We all took to some artist of her childhood that made her very happy. In the case of your mom got into Bob Dylan. Me and your other uncle, we could not stand Bob Dylan, you know? So she's like, I got one kid who gets Bob Dylan. I'm happy. Your other uncle, he got into The Doors, which was one of, our mom, your grandma's favorites. Yeah. And for me, it was the band The Who, if you're familiar with The Who.
Yeah.
Most people know The Who because they sing they use their songs for all the CSI theme songs. Again, different generations, how you can know The Who. I end up getting into The Who. So yeah, there's different things that make it happy. I will say as a plug here, I mean, the other podcast that I'm still doing, we're kind of in a revamp phase where we're going to be putting out new content soon, but kind of switching our shows up. But for movie reviews, if anybody does want to follow me, if you go on Letterboxd, I'm just Colin Hilding on Letterboxd. And I go through, I would say 2 to 3 movies a day, no matter what the day is. I will typically wake up in the morning very early because my kids wake me up, and I will just watch a movie until I start work. And then when I finish work, the kids are monopolizing the TV, doing whatever they're doing. I'm watching another movie on my phone. And then after they go to bed, my wife and I, we watch another movie. So I can have 2 to 3 reviews of movies a day on there. So tons of stuff that you'll never even get to cover on here. If anybody just wants to read my thoughts, look for me on Letterboxd, Colin Hilding.
Yep, and also look for him on Off the Podium. Did you guys end up winning, by the way?
We haven't found out yet. The voting's closed for the Sports Podcast Awards. We were the inaugural winners of the Best Olympic Podcast in the inaugural Sports Podcast Awards, but they didn't hold those last year because there was no Olympics. It's back this year. We're up again. We're up against heavy hitters. We're up against, Michael Johnson's podcast, who at one point was the fastest man alive. We're up against official shows from networks like BBC, NBC, and stuff like that. So it's stiff competition. But the fact we beat these people before, we could beat them again. So stay tuned to the Sports Podcast Awards coming up to see if we win that.
And I do hope you guys win again, because then you guys have another reason to brag your podcasting over my podcast.
There you go. We're already award winning. Yes.
I don't know when this is going to get released. I hope it gets released sometime in February. If Captain America Brave New World isn't sucky, which I hope it's not, yay for us. That's all I care about. I don't know when the Star Wars The Clone Wars is coming out. I don't know where Daredevil's coming out. I do know that our content's going to be coming out again in March for our best of 2024 movies. We got a bunch of movies, including Wicked. I think Colin would be a little bit interested in that, at least. Would you?
I'm a huge fan of anything Wizard of Oz.
Can I book you to host that episode recap?
I might be able to be persuaded.
Okay, we'll have to talk about that later. So look forward to Colin coming home for Wicked. And apparently Wicked for Good, or Wicked, whatever the second title is coming out later this year. So is it actually titled Wicked for Good?
Yeah, they have officially changed it, which I don't like that. I think that you just keep it consistent.
It's better than Wicked Part 2. I don't like movies called Part 1 and Part 2.
I'd rather, in this case, because we didn't even have a proper ending for the first. See, it worked for Dune Part 1, Dune Part 2. And meanwhile, the studio's out there saying, well, whoever watched a movie called Part 2? Like, Dune?
now, look forward to March where we do recaps, and Wicked will be part of it. Colin will be a part of it, and we'll bring in we'll actually educate me on Wicked, because I have never seen the play. So hopefully we get some time there, and some other movies that will be releasing there too. Yeah, look forward to that. My name is Patrick, and light 'em up, Colin.
And actually, the name's not Colin anymore. It's Collie.
Thank you for listening to the new episode of Cantina Cuisine. Make sure you follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts to listen to new episodes coming out every week just for you. Also, make sure you follow us on Facebook, Instagram, X, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for updates and follow-ups to our episodes and other content that you might like. Again, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you all next time. Peace out, nerds.